So we spoke yesterday about the sort of disturbing reality that at this late stage in the game, you still see most prominent Republicans quite fervently, fervently, and feverishly behind Donald Trump. We had this rally in Iowa over the weekend. Chuck Grassley was there saying Trump's great, all this different stuff. It's very, very concerning. And one of the ways in which Republicans signal their, at least for now, continued public loyalty to Trump, whatever they believe privately. They may hate the guy privately, think he's terrible for the Republican Party, whatever, right? But the way you signal that at least publicly you're still behind Trump is when you're asked, did Donald Trump have the election stolen from him? You don't say no. You come up with anything you can to avoid saying no. And that's exactly what radical bomb-throwing Republican Congressman Steve Scalise did over the weekend when he was interviewed by Chris Wallace. Now, it took me a couple days to get to this. We were off Monday for the federal holiday, and I didn't have time yesterday, but I want to get to it today. It happened on Sunday. Chris Wallace just keeps asking Steve Scalise, was the election stolen from Donald Trump, or will you say that it was not, that Joe Biden simply won? And Steve Scalise goes through every single iteration of how you don't say no. So let's just jump into it. We'll go through these examples and we'll talk about them. And it's interesting to see how Chris Wallace handles it. But really, for me, the more interesting part is to analyze the language that Scalise uses to answer questions that aren't the ones being asked, in order to avoid simply saying it wasn't stolen from Donald Trump. Let's jump in.
U.S. Capitol. Let me ask you one last question in this regard. Clearly, there were irregularities in the last election. There are irregularities in all elections. But I want to ask you a specific question. Do you think the 2020 election was stolen from Donald Trump?
And to be, I'm going to try not to jump in all the time. The way I've been saying this is, anecdotal irregularities aside, which there would always be in an election in a country of 330 million people, do we have any evidence that the irregularities in even one state rose to the level of being materially substantive as far as who the winner was? That's the core.
And in continuing to make that charge, not having states do election reforms, but specifically making this charge that the election was stolen, do you think that hurts, undermines American democracy?
Well, Chris, I've been very clear from the beginning. If you look at a number of states, they didn't follow their state-passed laws that govern the election for president. That is what the United States Constitution says.
Now, that's absurd. Think about even what Steve Scalise says there. States didn't follow their own rules, which is a matter of the U.S. Constitution. No, it's not. It's quite literally a matter of the state rules. It's not a U.S. constitutional issue. This is backwards and sideways and nonsense. Now, the other issue is, if states didn't follow their own rules, would that be a reason to give that state to Trump? Is that evidence that Trump actually won a state in which the, quote, rules weren't followed? So first you have to prove that, then you have to prove it's materially substantive, then you have to prove that it would have made the election go a different way. If there were people who voted absentee and then moved and then didn't call and say, I no longer live in the state, that may be something that took place, it may not. But then to say, and that means Trump should have won the state, is not backed by the evidence.
They don't say that the states determine what the rules are. They say the state legislatures determine the rules.
But the states all certified.
States, they didn't follow those state legislative.
The states all certified. They didn't follow
those legislative rules. Right, but at the end of the day, are we going to follow what the Constitution says or not? I hope we get back to what the Constitution says.
And remember, this is not it just is not about the U.S. Constitution. He's talking about state rules, state certification.
But clearly in a number of states, they didn't follow those legislatively set rules.
So you think the election was stolen?
What I said is there are states that didn't follow their legislatively set rules. That's what the United States Constitution says.
And so then
what?
And
I think there are a lot of people that want us to get back to what the Constitution says we should be doing, not just with elections, with a lot of other things, too.
This is where Trumpists end up repeating they ignored the Constitution in the 2020 election because they hear people like Steve Scalise say it without explaining it. And they just go, yeah, I don't know.
And then there's some people that want to just ignore what the Constitution says and do their own thing. You know, that's been a debate that's been going on in this country for a long time.
But
why don't we just get back to the Constitution? We wouldn't have that problem.
And there certainly can happen, but there
Understand that getting back to the Constitution is different than did Trump have the election stolen from him and was he the rightful winner? Two totally different things.
Out there was a rally for President Trump yesterday, and a number of people said, Joe Biden's not my president, Donald Trump is my president. I guess the question is, do you think the election, last time I promise, do you think the election was stolen or not? I understand you think there were irregularities and things that need to be fixed. Do you think the election was stolen?
Yeah. And it's not just irregular. It's states that did not follow the laws set, which the Constitution...
You guys think he'll answer this time? What do you think?
Says they're supposed to follow. When you see states like Georgia cleaning up some of the mess and people calling that Jim Crow law, that's a flat-out lie. I think most people need to stand up against that sort of thing.
All right.
Yeah, but the law says, again...
Guys, he's not going to answer the question. He's not going to answer the question. This is how you play coy and avoid the wrath of Trump supporters and avoid the wrath of Trump himself. I don't think there's really any way that Steve Scalise believes this crap in any literal sense. I don't think Steve Scalise believes Donald Trump actually won the election. I just don't think so. And Adam Kinzinger and others have said almost no Republicans believe that. Maybe a couple. I think, maybe Marjorie Taylor Greene, I don't know. But there is just no way that Steve Scalise believes that, but he doesn't want the wrath of Trump supporters or Trump. He's signaling his loyalty. They see this as a war, as I've said before, where maybe you've got to lie or maybe you've got to claim to believe something you don't really believe or whatever the case may be. This was 3-4 attempts by Chris Wallace to just get a simple answer. And the whole point is not answering is how you prove your loyalty. Not answering is how you prove your loyalty. And Steve Scalise is doing it, and we'll see how long they keep doing it. It appears as though it's going to be for quite some time. One of our sponsors is Shaker and Spoon, the monthly cocktail subscription box that delivers the ingredients and recipes for amazing craft cocktails right to your door. I use Shaker and Spoon to make cocktails at home. Always fun. The last one I made was Citrus Paradisi. Nice combination of vodka, tonic, lime, green tea, and rose. Nothing better than rose. You open the box, everything you need is right there. The recipe card, all the ingredients except for the alcohol. It's great because they always have ingredients that are really high quality and hard to find. The instructions are easy, so my cocktails always turn out great, even though I don't know anything about mixing drinks. But you learn a lot of new things about cocktails using Shaker and Spoon, which I love about it. Opening up your Shaker and Spoon box is a great way to spend a night in, and you'll get $20 off when you use promo code PACMAN at checkout. Go to shakerandspoon.com/Pacman. The link is down below.